All right, greetings. Welcome back to Blackburn News, where everything is connected. How y'all doing? Just rolling with the schedule changes. I apologize. My schedule got changed up today, kind of for nothing. So, which is very frustrating because, anyways, long story. But here we are, and we're live on Rockfin, Rumble, YouTube, and on X. We got Denver joining us today as a second mic. I don't know if Denver's here, but whenever you want to jump in, Denver, we're going to talk about all kinds of stuff. Going to pick back up the COVID. I don't know if I can control. Here, let's see. Oh, here we go. All right. So, Denver, your sound is on and your video is on. What's up, man?
Hey, not too much. It's my first time using the Rumble Studio, so.
Yeah, it takes a little getting used to.
Yeah. So, no worries.
Yeah, I think I've gotten enough experience with it that it won't surprise me today, hopefully. But anyways, how you doing, man?
Doing excellent. How about yourself, Mr. Sandbloom?
I'm cool. I just had, I don't know. I have endless kind of things coming up that erase my ability to be on time for the show. So that's frustrating, but whatever. It's all good. They're not terrible things. They're
Hey, that's good. That sounds like good activity. Sounds like good activity, man.
Yeah.
And
sure.
It just makes us appreciate the show all the more,
Okay. A little absence didn't hurt anybody, right? There's some kind of quote about that. I think.
Dude, I'm telling you, it's like this guy who I knew in grad school. He was a McKinsey consultant. He was like, okay. every great product, or not every great product, but like these guys who really know how to hack consumers. It's something that's not always available. And the example he was drawing, he was taking the bakery I used to live across the street from, which is right next to Tufts University, and started in the 1800s, and they'd have their seasonal breads that you could only get that time of year, and they were pretty much always sold out.
Right. Yeah, there is something to be said for the idea of scarcity. And I hear that in music too, right? Like, I produce music, and there's kind of a thing about like, overexposing yourself, being too available, being too visible, right? You kind of want to like sometimes disappear for a while, at least not be in people's faces all the time. That way, when you come around, they're like, oh, yes.
And, it's like when it comes to something like guitar, it's like I'll go, months. In some cases, I've gone years putting the instrument down. I pick it back up, and it's like you approach it with all new eyes,
Yeah,
like all new technique,
yeah.
and it's like sometimes it's a great way for it's kind of counterintuitive, but a great way to break
No,
through a plateau.
yeah, I can see that. And my all my writing is based on happy accidents. I try to break out of my, my need to like create a formula, and so whenever something happens that is wrong, wrong, I'm always like, what's that? Let's go down that road.
Totally.
Um,
Capture
oh,
the inspiration when it comes and write it down because it's only going to be there for an instant, man.
exactly. Which is why I have 1,500 voice notes on my phone.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, I don't even know what's on half of them. I don't remember. I don't have the time to go back and look at them. But one day, I'll write them all down now. When I have like nothing to do, when I'm like 78, I have nothing to do. I'll just be like, what about these voice notes here? Uh, anyways, man, let's talk about some things because I am going to try and limit it to an hour,
Okay.
just for the sake of everybody having things to do.
Absolutely.
Myself included. And so there's a few things that are happening uh, on the COVID mRNA end, right?
That's
Um,
right. And it's
you,
not it's mRNA, and there's also another platform that they're developing that is
okay,
running parallel to the mRNA. So it's at the same time you've got kind of different programs with different timelines for introduction. The mRNA, of course, we've already seen through COVID, and
right.
now you're seeing you've kind of had like a on the back burner, kind of slow simmering bird
Hmm.
flu, constant kind of
Oh
stories here
yeah,
and there they ferret out there, and yeah, just a few articles that I think kind
right.
of present a preponderance of evidence that they're kind of winding up their fastball for another pitch, I think,
Oh, I
or
think that
quite possibly.
yeah, I really think they've been trying to do that, and I guess as just I wanted to throw in a couple of things to begin to dispel some of the ideas that maybe like Trump is a savior. That he's on team mRNA, he's on team AI, he's on team pandemic response, he's on team emergency powers for the government. Like he is not in any way. But there's a plenty of right wing. I don't know what you want to call them, pundits,
Fans,
mouthpieces. Yes, sycophants.
bots,
Yeah,
server farms, what,
yeah. There's all
and
these guys out there that are like, "Yes, Trump, he's here to save us again."
yeah,
And yeah, no, that's not it. Real quick, I want to throw this up from this is interesting. Nicole Shanahan um, posted this, and she's talking about uh, RFK Jr. or these the new sorry, HHS appointments. Casey, it's like a brother and sister team.
hmm.
Casey Means. I just want to look at this real quick. This kind of will dovetail into your articles.
Okay, great.
Callie and Casey mean, and that's odd enough as it is, right?
Hmm.
They're being appointed as what's the actual official appointment? Surgeon General.
Okay,
So
like
they're saying Casey Means, but Callie Means is also kind of in the package, is what
weird.
I'm saying. So this is from Nicole Shanahan, who was RFK's running mate. So take this, big side eye on this. She says it's very strange, doesn't make any sense. I was promised that if I supported RFK Jr. in his Senate confirmation, that neither of these siblings would be working under HHS or in an appointment, and that people much more qualified would be. I don't know if RFK very clearly lied to me, or what is going on. It has been clear in recent conversations that he is reporting to someone regularly who is controlling his decisions. That's that's weird. It isn't,
Wow.
and it isn't President Trump. With regards to the siblings, there is something very artificial and aggressive about them, almost like they were bred and raised Manchurian candidates or Manchurian assets. Okay, so that is an interesting thing for a well-connected Silicon Valley. She's a billionaire by
Yeah,
means of marriage to Sergey Brin, and she's super uber connected to all kinds of people. Like
absolutely.
one of them being RFK Jr. Right? So
Yeah, she's in what we would call the technocratic Brahmin class.
right,
Yeah,
right. So she's calling something. If she's calling something out, it's kind of like Tulsi Gabbard. We that people should realize that people that are in these echelons are most likely doing narrative management. So but it's not just her. There's a whole slew of people calling out this appointment. Um, all while all the right wing bots are saying, "Way to go, Casey Means. This is the person
yeah.
to save us." So let's see. There's just a couple of posts on this, and Trump's Surgeon General nominee is triggering massive backlash across the health freedom movement or the Maha movement. Um,
You would hope. I mean,
yeah,
you would,
people are seeing this for what it is, which is great.
yeah,
Uh, and this is a great picture. Triggering a massive backlash. Whistleblowers, doctors, insiders, even RFK's own VP pick are now speaking out. Here's why this story is exploding. Okay, we already read this. Doctors turn on her, both well-known voices in the medical freedom space. Suzanne Humphreys and Henry Ely are calling her
Dr.
out. No,
Ely.
Dr. Ely, I presume. No experience, no stance on vaccine harm. Total silence for years, right, during the COVID years. A MAGA pick from heaven. I think hell. If you want a woman tied to Rockefeller family, so her father, I guess, is has ties to the Rockefeller. He was a an aide to Rockefeller when he was vice president. Was it David Rockefeller, who was vice president for a moment under Gerald Ford?
Yeah,
Um, tied to Rockefeller families, Bill Gates, Clinton, and Biden. So the swamp keeps on swamping. and
and that Shanahan again.
yes,
Wow. Yeah,
uh,
that's something I have not. I never really dug into her background past the fact that she's just tied in with a lot of the technology crowd and the Google crowd and um, but
yeah.
in terms of those like higher level connections, I mean, I can't say
Oh well,
it's entirely surprising, but
right. Um, well, they're actually talking about. I think. Okay, let's keep reading this. Toby Rogers ripped Surgeon General pick as a polished puppet for the establishment. He warned its move to repackage medical harm as health and called it a bad day for medical freedom. This is how you launder. What is iatrogenocide? I don't know what that means. I meant to look it up. Let's look this up. What's iatrogenocide?
I'm gonna guess some kind of bait and switch. It's like, hey, we're selling you wonderful popsicles, and it's actually genocide.
or in, induced unintentionally by a physician or surgeon by
Yeah,
medical treatment. So medical uh, malpractice, I suppose.
yeah. I got another name which fits in that category for HHS right now under Kennedy. It's a guy named David Geyer and
Oh,
his
right.
father
Okay.
as well. And they have kind of like a checkered history. If you were to pull up articles and look at them, it's all going to be like vaccine skeptics and blah 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 and this and that. And one could
Right.
fall into that whole being like, oh well, vaccine skeptics, they must have been against COVID. No, these people are for injecting kids and are for chemically castrating people with too high of a testosterone. So,
Oh God.
that's how you build. That's how you build strong countries, I guess.
Right. Just completely gut the ability of people to fight back or to have
Yeah,
an, like willpower.
yeah.
Um,
It was aimed particularly at uh, people with autism. But the way that these guys sold it, they're like, any kid with high testosterone, they'll just start humping their parents' leg, and you need to take care of this right now, and this and that, and blah blah blah. It's real
uh,
pieces of shit, man.
right. Right. Oh, I mean, John Glad in the chat says, "Do vaccines fit in that category?" Um, I would say yes. Um, so, jumping into another post, Brett Weinstein is saying again, another narrative manager, but President Trump is the reason that COVID shot is still being recommended for kids
Hmm.
because he was behind the development. He was the signer of the Operation Warp Speed. Uh, he
He
was
paid
told,
all the states. He paid all the states, so the states were totally, literally bought in. You know,
yep.
and all
Yeah,
the governors
he
are
was
like,
fully
"Yes,
behind it, right? And also
yeah."
bragging about the vaccines when he was out of office. He
Hmm.
was, it took him like 2 or 3 years for somebody to say like, "Hey, don't." Every time you say that, everybody turns against you. So maybe don't say that anymore. So he's doing this now quietly, right? He's RFK is the one who's kind of the point man, and he's better at beguiling people into thinking that he's anti-vaccine or anti-mRNA, while he and his office are still promoting these things. So that
Hmm.
leads me to the article that you sent me uh, from May 5th that HHS announces plans to pay Moderna 176 million for mRNA flu vaccine.
Yeah, yeah, because and this is tied to addressing the avian flu. It's addressing avian flu. It mentions how it's spread to cattle, and oh my gosh, we gotta pay Moderna to produce a great vaccine because they have such a wonderful track record in that regard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and this is right now, right? Like there's no
Yeah.
this is the HHS under RFK Jr. Right now going forward with an mRNA platform that he's out there or was out there casting doubt upon and telling people that vaccines should be looked at more thoroughly and more and again all the right wing guys on X are like, oh, RFK does it again. Here he goes. He's saving the country.
Yeah. It,
And
it it
it's
wouldn't
not.
be so soul crushing if he didn't like write a whole book, kind of
I
chastising Fauci, and now he's like essentially doing essentially
he's
this
doing
the same
Fauci's
thing.
job. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just kind of soul crushing. And I think that's the play. They want demoralization, man. They want demoralization as much as they can shove it.
Well, and it's working because every time you see somebody you might want to throw some hope at, and they turn around and betray you over and over and over, right? It's RFK, it's Bernie Sanders, it's Obama, it's Trump. Now Trump. Um, I don't know. I was watching a clip from Biden today, and kind of thinking about how the general public has turned against him. But remember how he is a serial liar,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Because he was not Trump, who was the other serial liar. People just supported and backed up everything he said, and backed him up as a great man. And if you say anything bad about him, you're a bad person, and you're a conspiracy theorist, and you're trash. And like
Yeah.
he just told lie after lie after lie after lie, and now I mean the lies were so thick and so deep and so consistent that eventually people were like, "All right, dude, like I just can't anymore," right? But like, are we at that point with Trump yet? Because I just it's I there's still supporters on his side, and we don't even know if that's a real support, right? Is
Yeah.
that
You know,
fake?
we may be at the point where we can't distinguish between what real public opinion is and what it isn't. You
Right,
know, because
right,
oh, I mean, but Biden was not popular in
not at all.
going into the term election before Kamala ran. He wasn't fucking popular at all. He was like he wasn't even considered a runner until he had like the Super Tuesday cleanup, and that was just all like that was one of the first times that QR codes was used with voting machines, and then there's all kinds of questions surrounding exactly what went on there, but it was not
Right.
didn't seem very legitimate given how much of a victory Bernie Sanders had in Nevada that year. Like, I mean, he just totally, I mean, he beat everybody by like a landslide.
Yes.
And I was in Mexico at the time, and that was just as COVID was picking up. I was in Mexico with a bunch of doctors. I was telling them all. I was like,
Mm,
it's like my brother's wedding down there. He's a doctor. All his friends are doctors. So I was like,
okay.
what we're watching is the avian bird flus that we saw spun up in the 2000s. We're seeing a similar thing happen again, and there's going to be a
Right.
whole lot of money marshaled around this. And I don't know how
Right.
far it's going to go, but you guys watch this. This is going to be a major issue. And they were all, we're eating it like at a rehearsal dinner, and they're just like, yeah, whatever,
I was one of those people, like, because of the avian flu and the swine flu, because we had like two of those like false starts, right?
Mm-hmm.
When COVID started, I was like, oh yeah, they're doing this thing again. They'll pump it up and it'll go away. It was
Yeah,
like, and 2 weeks later, I was like, oh yeah, I can't go out of the house now. Okay.
yeah, yeah. It escalated really quickly.
It did,
Yeah.
and I think that's why Biden didn't get the pushback that he deserved. The Super Tuesday, one of the reasons that Super Tuesday thing happened, and the fact that Bernie just bowed out. Like the COVID came and everybody was like, "Oh, we just got to go with the guy that that's has the experience and the name brand recognition. Like
Yeah.
let's not be anti anything right now because we got to pull together." And
And vote in the most corrupt Democrat that's ever served in
well,
the United States of America.
the other really like horrific thing that I saw was a good portion of the black population get behind Biden because of his perceived because of his ties to Obama, because Bernie Sanders was perceived to be, his supporters were, he was perceived to be like racist or something, kind of white, that thing stuck with him from 2016, the Bernie
Mhm.
Bros thing. And like,
Yeah.
I was like debating with, friends of mine who are like radical black revolutionary, right? Like, like super pro black revolutionaries going like, no, dude, Biden is our guy and shut the fuck up. And I was like, oh my god, it is complete. The brainwashing is complete. Like
Yeah.
the person that's supposed to see through this can't see through this. It's over. Like it's
Yeah.
done, man. Like I
Like,
was just like, wow, okay. And that was a big, they just had those like mental markers in place for people to the degree, and this is pre-COVID, right? Like they already had hypnotic things going on in the population, right? Like
hmm
Biden was Obama's dude, and Obama's great, and like if you question Biden, somehow you're racist, or if you like, they already had these mind like I don't know what you want to call them, but like these
iconic,
trances.
Iconoclasts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they had these messages going out that were working on people, absolutely working on people.
Oh yeah.
And so when COVID came in and they were like, if you read, if you're trying to do your own science or question what's going on, you are a like they and people were like, okay, yeah, we're gonna go, we're gonna just totally go with this. Like it was complete before COVID, but COVID just came in and like really, you know, just nailed it home.
Yeah, it was like the letter wax seal with like the hot like
Right,
stamp, the old
right,
days.
right. Thou shalt not question
Yeah, dude.
the official stamp of goodness.
And
Who
health.
dares go against the official stamp of goodness?
You question health? How dare ye? Burn the heretic.
Learn that exactly. Drawn and quartered, take him to the slab. Uh, yeah, and Timothy Martin is talking about the thing that Biden was saying about the kids would touch my hair in the pool. That weird, like
My
somebody.
hair would stand straight up, and kids would run their hands down my leg.
Oh
Yeah, it's
God,
just like what?
whoa! Like the creepiness of that. I couldn't actually believe that people were like, "That's okay."
James Clyburn was also a big part of selling it on Super Tuesday in South Carolina. James Clyburn
Oh yeah, no,
is that
and that's what I'm saying. He was
yeah,
he was part of the messaging for like uh, uh, a particular slice demographic of the
big time,
population where people
big
were
time.
like, oh, well, if he says so, then we're right behind him. It's like, okay, yeah, okay. All right, just turn off the brain.
Totally.
Don't worry about it. Everything's fine. All times. But yeah, so now Trump is that guy. Now Trump is Obama. Now Trump is hope and change. Now Trump is the liar in chief, the big, the big we're going to do big things and change the world kind of guy, and he's just sleepwalking people into further control into the control grid, right? Like so, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
But yeah, the reason I sent this article is, one, it illustrates just kind of a continuation of the same kind of lack of ethics that we saw
right,
from the previous administration on these very same issues. And it, like I mentioned earlier, it is one of two different platforms that they are developing. There's another one that's being developed, and I can throw that article real quick in the private chat here. And it is something that's owned wholly by the government,
okay,
apparently. Um, and it's something that was unveiled on the 6th.
okay,
And it's called the, let's see, the title of this is The New Gold Standard Initiative.
is this the right link that I have up or no?
That's the one.
Okay.
HHS and NIH unveil vaccine initiative to protect against future pandemics. Hooray!
Yeah,
That's what everybody was yelling for. That's exactly what they need.
that's exactly what we need.
Yeah,
Man, that last one, we didn't learn anything from the last one. We just need more protection. Please help us.
yeah. And
Protect us.
here's your glittery language: Generation Gold Standard to develop next generation universal vaccines using a beta propiolactone or BLP inactivated whole virus platform. Which
Okay.
I'm not an expert. That sounds a little bit more similar to like older technology vaccines, but
Right.
I'm I'm
your
I'm
your
not.
standard issue, your classic
Yeah,
uh, vaccines, right?
but they're talking about universal influenza and corona vaccines all in one, and BPL 1357 and BPL 24 910. The goal of these vaccines is to provide broad spectrum protection against multiple strains of pandemic prone viruses, such as bird flu and various coronaviruses. Huh.
They're moving at the speed of science.
Yeah, and unlike traditional vaccines, here's the technology part. The target specific strains BPL inactivated whole virus vaccines preserves the virus structural integrity while eliminating infectivity. This approach induces robust B and T cell immune responses and offers long-lasting protection across diverse viral families. Moreover, the intranasal formulation of BPL 1357 is currently in phase 1B, 2, and 3 trials and is designed to block virus transmission, an innovation absent from current flu and COVID 19 vaccines.
Blocking virus transmission is absent from current vaccines. Whoa!
Yeah, it's like, hey,
Tell me more.
maybe we should, actually add some
Wasn't
vaccine utility to these things.
well? Isn't that the traditional description of a vaccine? Is that it blocks transmission?
Yeah,
But no, we've got to add that because it's not available in the current vaccines. Uh,
yeah,
which they shouldn't. That's not a vaccine, right? That's something else.
yeah. So
That's a
this is a $500 million program,
oh
and I think the money's been earmarked, so it hasn't been officially budgeted yet. But you can see that they're getting their ducks in a row,
right.
and it's not like who's going to stand up and block this. I wouldn't expect Alexandria Ocasio Cortez to wear a blood draped dress looking like a Chick-fil-A sandwich protesting that, um, or anybody
Yeah.
else for that matter.
Yeah.
Oh, and here's the good part. Jeffrey Taubenberger, medical doctor, PhD, the current acting head of National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, which has exclusively developed Generation Gold Standard, holds a patent for the BPL
Oh,
vaccine
nice.
platform.
Nice.
So,
Well,
yeah.
come on, get out there and get. Let's get this party started. Let's go because we need some royalties. We need some vaccine royalties falling in.
Yeah, but the time
I'm
horizon
sure
date for that, they're looking at an FDA review expected by 2029. So that's like coming up in 2028, early 2029 is what
Okay.
it looks like their time horizon for that is. And in the meantime, uh, they just kind of keep poking and prodding us with occasional bird flu scares.
Right. Right.
And what kind of got my antennas up and how I recognized these two articles was an article in late April of this year, which alleged that there is hidden transmission of avian influenza
Y-
virus in a way where it crossed the oceans and managed to get into 100+ countries, and
We can't see it.
and it did it all sneaky like, and somehow
Yeah.
nobody knew about it. uh,
Yeah.
and it's like that's just it seems like a bunch of baloney. It's like how are you even gonna a lot of claims being made there, and it's something which seems like a stepping stone to the introduction and the earmarking of these funds. Um,
Hmm.
you know, and that was my read of the two. But yeah, I shared that article in the private chat. Uh, like this
Yeah.
vaccine advisor one, we pretty much hit all the high points of that one.
Right. Well, and I think I read, or we talked a little bit about that hidden
Yeah,
transmission, because well, this was kind of the thing that they used to really get people all worked up around COVID is
yeah,
that it's transmitting out there silently. You don't know if you have it yet, and it's
yeah,
going to mutate and come up and kill you in the middle of the night, and you won't even know. It's
yeah.
just yeah, they
Symptomless.
really got people going with that.
Yeah, symptomless infections, symptomless like sickness
Hmm.
and transmissions of the disease, which does not track with the history of sickness. It's like
Right.
But sickness is the symptoms. If you're not
Exactly.
exhibiting symptoms, then it's hard to argue that
Yeah.
you have some kind of lung infection or something along those lines.
Right. And speaking of which, Jiggy Leaks. I don't know if you follow the Jiggy Leaks.
I'm not
Uh,
familiar with it.
they do a lot of um, kind of deep investigation of stuff around COVID and vaccines and what's going on, and they are kind of tracking the COVID thing through the years. They've been just kind of doing some deeper dives, but they're talking about what was happening when people got to the started presenting when they got the vaccine and started presenting with the vaccine. There were protocols in place to make sure that people didn't get better but went in the
Hmm.
opposite direction. And so they're posting a bunch about that for the last couple of days. So they're saying, remember when you are not allowed anti-inflammatories for your viral infection to prevent the pneumonia that you weren't allowed antibiotics for until it was too late.
Yeah.
And then they would put people on the ventilators, right, which was a 90% death. That was basically a death sentence.
Yeah.
Once you got on the ventilators, it was all over.
Yeah. One of the most important things, which is very under recognized, but the research of people like Denny Rancourt,
Right.
his work has pointed to, but the fact is that most people who die in a hospital, uh, you know, a great deal of them die from an infection that they didn't have when they got to the hospital. And
Yeah.
that was even before COVID. And
Yeah.
the classic case of that are your ventilators, because I mean, you're sticking tubes all the way down into people's like lung. I mean, there's just like so much opportunity there for bacterial infection, you know.
Right.
Uh,
Right. Well,
and
they're.
like staphylococcus and stuff like that.
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
killed thousands and thousands and thousands of people every year. Every
That's
year of
right.
modern medicine,
Without
it
without
happens.
it being something. Well, there's also if you remember people talking about the the what was it the pandemic, the 1917. I think it had there was a name for it, but people when COVID was happening, people were like calling back to the pandemic that was like 1917, right around the beginning of World War I.
Yeah.
And the fact that a lot of the deaths were attributed to bacterial pneumonia, right?
Hmm.
And people were wearing masks back then, and they were saying that some of the cases of pneumonia, or a lot of the cases of pneumonia, could be traced to the actual wearing of the masks and not necessarily the right. But it was making things worse, not better.
Yeah.
Um,
You're breathing in more CO2. You're not breathing in as much oxygen.
right.
That just is a bad place to start from right there. If you're looking for optimal
Yeah.
health. Yeah.
Yeah. Spirit of the age. You were an essential hospital worker during COVID. That's interesting. Uh, I don't know. Yeah, I would like to. I'd like to know what people were seeing that were. There was a what is his name? Patrick. I can't remember his last name. He used to watch the show, and I was talking to him during COVID. He was a nurse in Michigan, I want to say, or Ohio, somewhere, and he was saying he right at the beginning of COVID, they closed the hospital down he was working at. I was like, all right,
Wow.
hospitals were overrun, right? Like I
Yeah.
don't. Yeah, he was like, they closed my hospital down,
Because they were
and
trying to channel everybody to like
they were
one hospital in each city.
exactly. Yeah, it's interesting. Um, yeah, so I found that very interesting, and then they shifted him to another hospital, and he was like, this is all very weird. I haven't really heard from him in a long while. Hopefully, he's okay, whatever he's doing. Creative experiments. Asymptomatic transmission is essential for a global pandemic. Ebola is not global because people get sick too fast. Spirit of the age. I worked in the IT department and went to every unit in the hospital. Okay. Okay. Um, yeah, I mean, well, and there were plenty of nurses and doctors out there during the pandemic going like,
Yeah.
don't
What what's
really
what
agree.
Spirit of the Age was is what they call in Warhammer 40K a tech priest.
Sounds awesome. How do I get my hat? Get tech priest. Okay. Let's we got, I don't know, 20 minutes left. I don't know. We're on YouTube, which is maybe dangerous to be talking about this stuff on YouTube, but who knows?
We're not really making too
We're
too
not we're
many
not
like
we're
out.
not making concrete declarations of. I'm
Yeah,
not a doctor, and I'm not giving anybody medical advice, and I'm not making any concrete declarations about medical knowledge. But we're just pointing to things that were established, over time, right? Over time by people who are, people who are much more credentialed than we are.
yeah.
So we're just pointing to evidence that has been presented over the years. Okay. Oh well, one more thing about this WikiLeaks post. They did their best to restrict antibiotics as well as hydroxychloroquine. You remember the whole thing about the doctor that seemed a little bit out there, who was like a friend of Trump, who was a Trump supporter and was trying to say hydroxychloroquine, sorry, was the thing, and everybody was like, she's crazy,
Hmm.
and they used that was a whole bit of theater in order to like drive home the point that you could not use these drugs because only the crazy people were recommending these.
Dude, I was at the pharmacy. I had left to go to the pharmacy to get hydroxychloroquine. My brother, who's a doctor, called the prescription in for us, and by the time I got to the uh, to the pharmacy, they were like, "We can't sell this anymore."
Wow.
Yeah,
Well, and the same was happening with ivermectin too. Like there were doctors losing their license for prescribing ivermectin, which is in
yeah.
California, which
But
is wild.
as soon as those practical treatments, it's like I guess the Google Buzz meter like really popped up on those things there, and they were like, "Well, we better crush that, or else it's going to derail our whole plan here."
Yeah, well, and they couldn't actually keep that going for very long because eventually, I think it was during the first year, 2020, that they did their best to demonize those things. But by 2021, I think. Well, I didn't get COVID until like 2021 or whatever it was that people were calling COVID. And I got a prescription for ivermectin like super easily. Right, I just went on the internet and there was a chatbot doctor. Right, there was some dude face. Hi, I'm Doctor Wong or whatever. Can I get some ivermectin? Sure. We don't recommend it. We would prefer that you would take this. I was like, no, I want the ivermectin. Okay, here you go. I was like, all
Hmm.
right. It was, they eventually had to let people use those things because the cat was out of the bag.
Yeah,
That those were the things that were effective. But, the damage was done as far as, people showing up in ICUs in 2020, which is what they were going for, right? Like,
and I heard different accounts from doctors. Like I said, my brother, he's an ER doctor. His wife's an anesthesiologist, uh, and he was working in New York City at the time, which is it's like one of the real like arenas of where whatever was happening, at its peak. And he
right.
said the story he told me that I still remember is when he was making his rounds, it's just like, I don't know. He said it was like a, 30, 45 minute, hour and a half round, whatever it was. And there was a guy who he said he was like perfectly healthy, sitting there sipping a cup of coffee in his bed. He'd gone by and been like, "How are you doing today?" It was like a second day. When he came back around, the guy was gone. He died. And it was
What?
just like, and he was just like, and he was exhibiting no symptoms, and David
Yeah.
was just like, whatever this is, it's dangerous. Like that's what sold him on COVID, was that particular experience.
Mm. Okay.
So I don't know what was going on, but
Yeah, there has to be something more going on in that particular case, right? Because that,
yeah, I
yeah,
did find a report of uh, private equity ownership of hospitals, and uh, I want to say it's like a 10-year analysis from like the late 2000s up to the late 20 teens,
yeah,
maybe to, it's like right up to before COVID. And of course, it found that private equity hospitals have far worse outcomes for their patients.
of course, yeah, of
So it's
course, yeah.
it, it, I have to wonder. I'd love for somebody who's better at parsing those details to like maybe take that report and see if we can connect some dots between
Hmm.
between where the hospitals were that were experiencing, the ones that were slated to be like the catch-all hospitals in each region,
Yep,
uh,
yep, yep.
and who's behind the ownership or operation of those puppies.
Spirit of the Age is saying it was just a standard yearly flu, and they just turned it
Hmm.
into something more. So interesting. So a couple of interesting anecdotes from the time. Um, I was driving Lyft prior to COVID,
So was I.
and hey, everybody's doing it.
Yeah,
It's an easy thing to do,
yeah.
comparatively to other things. But like, so I was driving Lyft, in man, like a couple weeks before COVID happened, like every person that got in my car was just sick as a dog, right? Like with a flu, right? Like they were, it was like congestion, runniness, coughing, sneezing. Oh, I can't. And I,
Hmm.
like every single person, I was like, wow, okay, this is all right. And like I thought that was interesting. I didn't know, it didn't seem like it was anything worse than the flu. It just seemed like there was more of it around, and also people were doing their regular things, and I never, with all these people getting into my car, and this is pre-COVID, so I wasn't wearing a mask, I wasn't doing anything. I never got sick from any of that. But so, and then very quickly, the time that I got, whatever COVID or whatever it was, it's supposed to be COVID. Uh, I got it from a vaccinated person. So I got it from somebody who was vaccinated, got it, gave it to me, and I was like, wow, all right. But I made it all the way through.
My
Never getting
story.
sick and being around a bunch of people who were sick.
Yeah, my COVID sickness story was like well into all of it. I'd like traveled to New York for my sister's wedding, and I was in New York during when the lockdowns had lifted temporarily and all that kind of stuff before Biden was elected and all that. Um, and I never got COVID. I never got my vaccine. Never got COVID. The only time I got sick during all that was
Yeah.
when I made the mistake of eating a Taco Bell bean and cheese burrito. and
Right.
and it's like I
Yeah.
got like a slight fever from that. I was better in 2 days.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's what, what's funny is that's what I thought it was when I first got sick. It felt like food poisoning. And that's what I thought it was when I and I don't know what I really had or not or whatever, but like it was pretty harsh. It was a very strong flu, but like the first 2 days, it felt like food poisoning, and I thought like, oh, I'm just getting better. It's over, it's past. And then like I had a second wave that like took me down for like a whole other week, but and I don't really know what that was. Um, let's see. Uh, Yeah, the other anecdote I had about the time was when COVID was happening. I was doing this show, And this was before, YouTube destroyed my channel, and I had, I
Mm-hmm.
had like regularly like 100 people watching the stream a day, and like 130 whatever it was. And during COVID, it was a lot more because everybody was home.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about, there were videos surfacing of people going to hospitals, and there was nobody there. And so that became kind of a thing that we were talking about, and um, and that was a real thing. Like there weren't, they were saying, oh, overrun hospitals, and they're, packed emergency rooms, and like people would be going to hospitals and going, there's nobody here. Like,
Yeah.
so what is this? Where is this? And one of my viewers uh, was an avid biker, right, a bicyclist, and he rode past this hospital every day. So he sent me a video. He was riding past the hospital, and there were some nurses walking down the road, walking out of the hospital, and he stopped, and he's like, hey, he's chatting them up, and he's like, hey, what's up? How's it going in there? It's busy, and they're like, there's nobody in there. So he sent it. I played that on the show. So that that stuff was happening. I was also seeing like the same thing in my town, right? Like where I was taking care of my dad at the time, and my dad, had to go to the hospital all the time. He had doctor's visits and stuff. He had to go to the, get checkups all the time, or get prescriptions filled or whatever. So I would take him to go, to the local Kaiser, and there was nobody there, nobody. Right? They had these like emergency COVID lines, come get tested, or come if you're sick, and
Totally.
it was crickets. It was nobody there, and I was like, oh, okay, all right, okay.
Yeah, they spent hundreds of millions of dollars to open one of those emergency hospitals in the state of Tennessee, and not one person used it. They closed it down. They like
Yeah,
hundreds of millions of dollars, just like you
right.
know.
And it was like, well, so what? There was one more thing about that is that there was a U.S. naval ship off the coast of New York that they brought into dock, and that was going to serve as like an overflow hospital. And in the court proceedings against Cuomo, Governor Cuomo, when he was, he was kicked out of office, and he was taken down for all this impropriety. They were looking. Of course, he never got like prosecuted, right? Because he was doing all kinds of stuff that was fairly despicable.
Yeah,
But in those proceedings, the lawyers that were investigating him said this emergency overflow hospital ship just sat there empty the entire time, which makes you go like, all right, well, there's, you know, was the overflow? Like, why was this called what it was? Anyways,
it's just one more point. It reminds me of all the money that's gone missing in California for like taking care of the homeless, and you've got like these facilities that are supposedly fully operation, ready to take people in at any time. Being paid like $500,000 a
right.
year or something or more, and it's just like they're just empty. So it's just
Yeah.
everything's money laundering, as you've suggested in on more than one
Yeah.
occasion.
Here's some more money laundering. Okay, so let's hit a couple more stories before we get out of here. I just had a couple things I wanted to. I think we got a good amount of traction on that particular thing. This is a James Lee talking about. He's doing a good job of like looking into where money is going around in California,
Hmm.
mostly amongst the homeless, but also there are a lot of weird things going around the fire cleanup, especially around the Pacific Palisades. I haven't really seen a lot of this investigation into the Eaton fire. However, people are talking about toxic toxic elements being still in the ground and not being properly cleaned up or disposed of. But it seems more centered on the Pacific Palisades, on the Palisades fire cleanup. They seem to be having difficulty doing the right thing. So, anyways, California's $10 million contract to clean up Pacific Palisades fire debris was money laundering. When questioned, they can't answer a single thing they've done. Previously convicted of stealing disaster funds, their donation history is all Act Blue. Let's watch this is a short video, kind of. 1 second. James Lee has done a few other things on this.
Yeah, that is some creepy looking water. I don't think we're getting any video on, or any volume on the video.
Say what?
I don't think we're getting any volume on the video.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Or it needs to be turned up.
Oh, really? Okay. Can you hear it or no?
I can't.
Let's see if can anybody else hear it. I want to make sure that.
Yeah, make sure it's not just my headset.
Yeah, sorry about that. I can hear it through my computer, but oftentimes it won't. Can everybody hear the volume on that video that I was just playing? Anybody? Somebody? And while we're waiting for a response, you guys know that you can support the show. There are a bunch of links in the description box of all the channels you're watching on. If you like the show, coming to you for free Monday through Friday. There's lots of ways to do that. And, you guys can't hear it? Okay, great. Let me fix that. Real quick, like, where is this? Let's see. All right, one more time. Or 2 more times. Okay. No, this isn't it. Hold on. Let me get it straight. Having difficulties pushing buttons. My bad. All right, one more time. For the people in the back. All right, here we go.
This is our new normal. For the last 3 months, every time it rains, this is what we get in LA County. Every time it rains, we get a fresh restock of the toxic runoff from the Palisades and Ethan Fire. It's just going to keep happening because it hasn't been cleaned up yet.
And why hasn't it been cleaned up? It's been months. Because back in February, the city hired an outside disaster response firm called Haggerty Consulting, run by this man, Stephen Haggerty, to oversee LA's wildfire recovery. The LA Times reported that Mayor Karen Bass selected Haggerty Consulting to assist with infrastructure restoration and environmental mitigation. Price tag, $10 million. And as you just saw, this is not great environmental mitigation. And now the residents are getting pissed.
I'm looking for a concrete example of something that you did that moved things forward and moved the needle. And I'd appreciate hearing it now, not later.
Okay. Take that back, Harrison. And respond at some point.
Hello?
Yeah. I don't mean to be disrespectful, and I do intend to provide that information. We also have a website that has a lot of examples of our work. I want.
I mean, off the top of your head, just something that you did. I mean, it's got to be a memorable moment for you if this is what you specialize in.
Sure.
You've got to think real hard.
I think that, I want.
Okay, just one thing though. Just one thing.
In this case, almost everything that is happening when there's augmentation support, it's happening with the augmentation support. That's the point of it, and we're trying to make.
I don't know what that means.
Faster.
I don't know.
I don't even know what is augmentation support.
I don't know.
Oh my God. Well, you see, circling back, augmentation support, blah. I couldn't answer because they don't actually do anything. other than maybe taking money from taxpayers and putting it in their own pockets. And yes, you're reading this correctly. The firm that Mayor Bass hired is a criminally convicted firm. We're talking about their consultants stealing over $500,000 from victims of Hurricane Sandy who just lost everything. So why were they even hired? We don't know for sure, other than this reporting from the LA.
And they're really good at doing this kind of stuff, and we'd like to make sure that it happens again.
Yeah.
Like Pfizer, right? Criminally convicted, has paid billions of dollars in fines for, right, all kinds of malpractice, and yet they're now legally, indemnified.
Times that says the mayor's search for a recovery contractor had been, quote, mostly shrouded in secrecy. I don't know exactly what happened behind closed doors, but based on my digging, it almost certainly looks like a partisan political decision. As you can see here, Haggerty Consulting tied very closely numerous donations to the biggest Democratic Party fundraising platform. Those people need to be fired. That's it.
Okay.
Not just fired. Like, somebody needs to go to jail, man, or else it just keeps happening. Somebody needs to go to prison. Somebody needs to be like, there has to be consequences for these actions, or else the cacistocracy just picks up more and more momentum.
Right. It's odd what's going on there. I have to say, and I covered a little bit of it yesterday as well. Like I said, I haven't seen a lot of that stuff around the Eaton fire, which my house was in. Like, everything as far as that cleanup goes and that whole process, it seems like it's been going really quickly and really smooth. So, like, I can't, I have no, that I can see, I don't have a lot of complaints about that. And FEMA has been very, like, on the go, and they've been, there's been a lot of, right, help and support from, like, various organizations around the city as well as FEMA, and they're really trying to make sure that people get taken care of. And so, so I want to, the reason why I want to say that is kudos to the people that are doing their job, and kudos to the organizations that are doing their job. And from what I can see in this instance, I don't know, as far as the Palisades go and what is going on with that cleanup, and as far as, like, Karen Bass and the weird stuff that she's doing, like hiring this firm, I don't know anything about that. It looks hinky as hell, and so I don't know, but I have to just give a balanced reporting of what I'm seeing. Like, as far as the Eaton cleanup, like, people are already, have their properties cleared, and they're already, like, cleared to rebuild, and they're starting to, like, rebuild. There are people that have questions about the nature of the cleanup and how well that went, and so those things are still to be answered. We'll see. What's up? What are you talking about, Bella? We're trying to take a break from doom scrolling. Went out for a walk and only have the doom scroll in the sky. Oh my god. Starlink satellites. Okay. Yeah, that'll, you can't escape it. You can't escape the doom scrolling. All right. Let's we're getting pretty much towards the end here. One more thing. This is also James Lee and Derek Bros.
Oh, nice.
Talking about the Real ID. I'll play this on the way out of the show, but Derek Bros is talking about the implications of the Real ID, which supposedly went into effect yesterday. They are not. They're saying that you need it, but they are not. It's not like they're doing a soft enforcement, so they're not, like, turning people away from the airport. They're not, like, you're not getting shut down completely if you don't have a Real ID. I'm sure that lots of people don't have a Real ID. I don't have a Real ID.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of people are not planning to get a Real ID. And
airlines are kind of suffering right now too. So it's like,
right.
This is just one more thing that just kind of crushes activity and demand for the service.
Yeah, I would say if you don't get a real ID, this might put pressure, right? Because if the airlines are suffering and then they are fearing people not, flying or not going to the airport or not showing up because they think they're gonna, et cetera, right? Like this could actually, it's actually a point of pressure that people could
Yeah,
apply to
we
not.
could boycott. We could
It's
boycott the
called,
airlines.
boycott. It's called, yeah, right. There's all kinds of things you can do.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's supposed to be in effect as of yesterday. It is not. It is a soft rollout. They're not really turning people away as of yet, and so it gives a little wiggle room for them to continue to move it forward, but it also gives people some more wiggle room to not get this ID. So let's listen to Derek Rose talking about this, and this is from a Breaking Points episode.
You might have heard that starting May 7th, Americans will need a Real ID compliant license to board a plane or enter a federal building. The Real ID Act was passed back in 2005 in the wake of the 9/11 attacks, sold to the public as a post 9/11 safety measure, a quote-unquote long-delayed upgrade to protect our elections and national security. What you might not know is how this push fits into a much larger agenda, one that some say includes mobile driver's licenses, biometric facial recognition, and partnerships between government agencies, global institutions, and big tech to roll out digital IDs across the country. Now, to help us break all of this down, I recently sat down with independent journalist Derek Rose, a prominent voice warning us about the dangers of digital identity systems. Here is that conversation.
Thanks for having me on, James. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So we're gonna hopefully dive deep into this, but I first want to start with maybe the basics for people who haven't looked into it much. What exactly is a Real ID, and how is it that different from an old driver's license system that we've had for decades?
Sure. So you sort of outlined the beginning of it, which was 9/11, and of course after 9/11 calls for making the country safer. How can we prevent terrorists from entering the nation? How do we, keep track of everybody in a way that is, supposedly going to reduce crime, reduce terrorism. Now it's been 20 years since then, and there's less talk of terrorism in the ways there were post 9/11, but there's still this discussion, I'd say now more, especially with the right wing, of how are we going to keep track of all the voters? How are we going to keep track of illegal immigrants, et cetera? So the same ideas are still being pushed. As you mentioned, it's been delayed numerous times through every administration up until this point. And now the deadline is finally here. The thing that makes it different just on a practical level is people will notice you might have like a little star in your driver's license. So many people already probably have these and just didn't realize that they got them, because over the last 20 years, as state by state has started to become compliant, more and more people are getting these, like I said, whether they realize them or not. So now we're at the point where all across the nation, everybody's going to have one of these to enter federal buildings, to do various things in the country. And the main thing, though, is just that you'll notice a little star. They promise that there's some more counterfeit measures. So on the practical level, that's pretty much it. You won't really see anything different. We're not at the point where it's just your face to get in somewhere. But as I have written about recently, I do think that's where it's headed, particularly at the airports and federal buildings and places like that. But for the moment, it's simply just a change in the look of your ID.
Yeah, you mentioned you wrote an article about this. So I wanted to dive into that a little bit. And you wrote, quote, "Real ID is the latest move inching Americans closer to mandatory digital identification programs, not only for voting, but for daily life." Can you walk us through a little bit of how this, seemingly innocuous Real ID requirement connects to this argument that you're making, a much larger and broader infrastructure, things like mobile driver's licenses, facial recognition, digital ID system? Basically, lay out your theory for us.
Sure. And I don't think it's very far-fetched, first I'll say, because in order to be Real ID compliant, there's a few things you can do. One is what we just described, just get an update of your driver's license, your state ID, and it's going to have the little star in it, and then you'll be Real ID compliant. The other is to continue to use a passport. So if you're someone like me who only has a passport, then, you just keep doing what you've been doing. But there are also other forms of being Real ID compliant. One of them is known as mobile driver's license, or just MDLs. And again, people might be using these already because there's certain states that have adopted them in the last few years without realizing that it's Real ID compliant. But essentially what a mobile driver's license is, there's several versions. Some in certain states are government run, government owned. So you have a, My ID, insert state name. Then there's others that accept Apple and Google Wallet, Google ID sort of apps to become Real ID compliant. And what these are basically doing, in my mind, is just getting people, as you quoted me there, a bit closer to this Real ID, this digital ID, facial recognition everywhere. Because to be Real ID compliant, the easiest way is to get the idea. But you could also just start using your phone. Many people are doing this everywhere, and they're also scanning their face to open their phone. So maybe hearing this is not like some big concern to many people. But if you've been paying attention the last decade to digital rights, digital privacy, people much more informed than me, lawyers, NGOs, nonprofits who focus on these issues particularly, have been warning about the growth of facial recognition, have been warning about the growth of digital IDs, and how as those systems become more interconnected, starting with, okay, you have your identification to get into federal buildings on an app, but then over time, as these systems expand, which they will, both in the private sector and through government, to include your health information, to include your banking, financial information, et cetera, you end up being very close to what China has in their form of WeChat, and the one app that sort of has everything in it. And again, this is going to be sold in a way that's convenient, it's fast. We're seeing this at the airport. People are being encouraged to go paperless and to just use their face to check in. And we've heard from the airports that maybe as soon as this fall, but definitely in the next couple of years, they plan to make facial recognition a mandatory part of the check-in process. So in all different sectors, starting with the Real ID, with mobile driver's license, and especially at the airports, we're seeing this push towards digital identifications. And mobile driver's license is just one form of that. I'll also just note briefly that the TSA has already made it clear on their own website that they will accept mobile driver's licenses as a Real ID compliant ID. And again, they've also got pages on their website showing you how you can skip the whole ID part at all and just do facial recognition, which they're starting to roll out at different terminals. So overall, I don't think it's a big leap to kind of point out what we expect to see in the next couple of years. I don't think it's going to happen by the end of this year that digital IDs will be everywhere, but I do think becoming Real ID compliant with things like mobile driver's license is definitely taking us in that direction.
All right. Well, yeah.
Another quick point. Another thing that's taking us that direction is, how DAs choose to enforce the laws in their respective districts. If you can go into a store and you can steal less than, what's grand larceny or grand theft, and pretty much like get away with a slap on the wrist, that is going to push retailers more to adopt these systems, even more so than just the general want to do so due to, saving on employment costs and things like that. They're like, this is a liability. We're getting taken the amount of loss of our inventory and blah, blah, blah. We got to do this to put an end to.
Right. You can set up these other things to be the real snare or net. Right. Like I guess you don't really even have to enforce the Real ID, but if you can threaten people with it and say like, well, but you could do facial recognition and then you won't need it. Then you push everybody into that, right? Into that reality where then all of a sudden everybody needs to do the facial recognition. And actually, the last time I was at the airport, it was the first time that they did that. I presented my ID, and they had a little camera there, and they were like, "Okay, stand back and let the camera get your face." And I was like, "Oh, there's no way out of this." I guess you could say like, "I don't want it." I don't know what would happen, but they were just doing it. They were just doing it like. There was kind of like you just hand it over and like you were already in front of the camera.
Yeah.
You were like, hold on. And you were like, then you're already there.
You're not even given a chance to.
Yeah.
It's like they get the picture before you even recognize you're having a picture taken.
Exactly. And of course they have so many other pictures of you. All over the place. Right. So,
yeah.
But yeah, so if they push you into mobile IDs or facial recognition, they don't, the Real ID is just a just a, one cudgel, on this side to get you to, move that way.
Yeah, it's a first down marker down the field towards the end zone.
Right. Yeah.
It's like a prerequisite of sorts for, the other things that Derek is discussing there.
Right. And they may never even really, totally enforce the real ID.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've seen so many deadlines over the last 10 years. This is it. You got to get your real ID this year,
Mm-hmm.
Every single year. They're like, yeah, this is it. This is the year to get it. And I was like, well, okay, when is the year that you're really going to have to get it? Now this year, they're like, this is it. This is the year you're going to have to get it. Okay. How many people are really going to get it? I don't know. Yeah. All right. Hey, guys, we're going to have to sign off here. And thanks, Denver. Really appreciate you.
Yeah, man. Happy to come on.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to do this on a regular basis. If you're down, maybe, once a week or something, or.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
We can discuss that.
And it's nice to get out there and prove that, like I'm a real person and not an AI and stuff,
You are not the bot.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Always good talking to you. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for hanging out. And everyone else, we will be back tomorrow at the regular time of 12 p.m. I know I usually or been trying to do the Substack shows, but things have been so weird and like all over the place. I think what we'll do is just try and just do a regular show tomorrow on the regular channels, right? So just show up here, right here, wherever you're at. Come back here tomorrow at 12 p.m. Pacific, and then we'll figure out Substack at a later date. But anyways, thanks again. Thanks everyone. We will talk to you later.
See you guys. Hell yeah, man.
Yeah, appreciate you.
Yeah, I liked it. You should watch that that vid that I sent of the it's like the comic relief labeled one. It's the one that's labeled where Jeffrey Epstein and P. Diddy are right now. It's hilarious, dude.
No, you can't hear me. I don't know if everybody can hear us or not right now. So I'm, I don't. The controls on Rumble Studio are a little weird. So, anyways, thanks again, Denver. I'll talk to you. I don't know. I'll hit you up about next week.
All right, sounds good, man.
All right, thanks a lot, man.
All right, take care.
Peace.